Terrific. Thank you so much, Christy. Hello, everyone, and we really appreciate you joining us. Today, I know everyone's schedule is pretty busy these days, but I wanted to start off with just giving you a little bit of background about Language Tree Online. So we've been around since 2003, quite a long time, but always focused on language acquisition. The past 5 years, we've been solely focused on English language development, specifically for secondary students, middle and high school. The reason for that is we really feel that these students have a short ramp before graduation, and they really need, the most support. Joining me presenting today is David Noyes. David has his national boards in English language development, and David is the English learner coach at Long Beach Unified School District, which is one of our largest districts in California. And he's over English learners K-12. And he's also an award-winning curriculum writer, and he is the head of our curriculum at Language Tree Online. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Good afternoon, everybody. We wanted to give you a little bit of background on the development of the resources for our ELD Level 2. It was really the call to arms, or that moral imperative was really around addressing the increasing numbers of long-term English learners. Over the past couple of years, we've had many students in middle and high school become or kind of reach that long-term English learner status without having the opportunity to redesignate for fluent English proficiency. And those numbers seem to be getting higher and higher every year, especially in the state of California. Some other resources or lack thereof that kind of brought us to that call to arms was the limited number of resources for our secondary students around standard-based language development curriculum that also included advanced foundational skills. And those are the foundational skills that our students, if they were in elementary K3, K4, they got some of those advanced foundational skills. But if they entered middle and high school beyond that, they didn't have those skills. And so there are big gaps, and research suggests that we have to address those gaps. Subsequently, there was a lack of useful summative data. We have summative assessments that our English learners take annually in every state, except that that information is really hard to comprehend or to navigate for teachers. And if teachers don't understand where some of the gaps are, as well as the assets or the strengths, it's hard to plan instructional practices that support those English learners. Formative data. What are next steps? What are some things that we can do with our English learners that give us kind of a next steps into providing subsequent lesson design that supports language development for our students? Very little of that. And then lastly, that culturally responsive pedagogy. We want our students to see themselves in the curriculum. We want them to make connections with the world outside of the classroom. So how do we, in our, again, kind of our moral imperative was, how do we create lessons that connect that culturally responsive pedagogy? So very quickly, we just this is something we like to ask our colleagues or anyone joining us is if you're comfortable, just what types of formative and summative assessments in your school district do you utilize? And if you wanted to just put that in the chat, feel free to do so. Some people are just really here to kind of soak in the information. So if we don't see any comments in the chat, we will just kind of move on.
Okay, well, feel free to interrupt me if there's any information in the chat, but I just wanted to talk a minute about our approach with our assessments. So I think the names kind of say it all. We have entry assessments and exit assessments. So they're set up pretty much exactly the same way. The questions are not identical, but they're very similar, and we're assessing the same skills. So you can see over here, there's three areas. We like to refer to them as buckets, but there's the foundational literacy skills area, collaborative listening and speaking, and language function and construction. So in each one of these areas, there are approximately 25 assessment questions. Some are 28, 24, 29, but all in, there's a total of 81 assessment questions. So it's a very, very thorough assessment. Um, but what we did that was unique is we only put one standard per question, but we have more than one question with that standard in it. The reason that we took that approach is we really wanted educators to be able to see down to the skill level where that student is having challenges. So this enables you to do that. And because it's all online, students can certainly start with foundational literacy skills wherever they get to. Let's say they get to question 10, that's fine. And then next time they log in, they pick up where they left off. But eventually, the initial part is to really go through and have them complete all three of the entry assessment areas, really just to gauge where they're at and where they need additional support. So those standards-based lessons, or excuse me, assessments, they correspond with the standards-based lessons. So you can see here we have those same three buckets. And then we really have a uniform teaching style in the online lessons from the perspective that the virtual professor provides the lesson input for the students. And because it's video based, they can watch it as many times as they would like to. And then from there, they move through the interactive activities. And then for each online lesson, we also have downloadables, which are essentially a support for teachers. Only teachers have access to the downloadables, where we have some warm up and modeling that the teachers can do with their student for each and every lesson. And then we also have practice assignments. So, and when I take you in, it'll make more sense when we take you in to see the demo, but you can try to visualize. So there's 13 online lessons, and then there are 13 downloadables that have a warm up and modeling that the teacher can do with your students. And then there are 13 practice assignments, and the practice assignments can be many pages long. They're also in the program, so students can type right into the program. And you can see on the right hand side, I'm sorry, it's tiny type here, but in foundational literacy skills in our level 2, these are really advanced foundational literacy skills. So we're getting into things like the schwa sound, our control vowels, complex spelling patterns. So some pretty challenging foundational literacy skills. And then collaborative and listening and speaking, there's 12 lessons, and language function and construction, there's 7. And the rigor is pretty challenging in these two areas, the collaborative listening and speaking and language function and construction. So I think I'll turn it over to you, David. Go ahead.
This is just in reference, Jen alluded to the kind of the sequence of the lesson. And so it starts out on the left, you see the virtual professor introducing the input to the students. And one of the things that sets us apart from, other online resources is we ask the teacher to be the pilot, and the virtual professor is the co-pilot. So this is a great opportunity for the teacher to teach alongside of the virtual professor and start and stop the video, ask questions for clarifications, maybe do some note taking where students are adding examples to the input, providing more formative opportunities for the teacher to kind of dig in a little bit deeper around the skill, or kind of continue on to the interactive exercise. And that's what you see there on the right-hand side is the interactive exercise. And that's the opportunity for the student to, after having the input, for the student to either independently or collaboratively in a pairs practice, input some of that information. Again, the teacher, this gives the teacher the opportunity to monitor the progress. They can be moving around the room if it's within, virtual, or checking in with the students just to see how they're doing with the interactive exercise, to see if there needs to be more feedback or input around supporting them with acquiring the skill. And lastly, we with our even within our foundational skills and our with our intermediate and long-term English learners, we want to provide as much visual input, stimulation, multisensory input as possible. So it's developmentally appropriate. They don't see things watered down. The curriculum's not watered down, and always connecting to multiple areas or disciplines such as math, science, and social studies. So we want to make sure that our students are seeing the language skills or functions living in multiple content areas. And this is kind of going back, kind of backtracking into, this is a lesson example of collaborative listening and speaking, which has to do with exchanging information and ideas. And that you'll see on the left-hand side, this is just kind of a model where you're going to see the integration of multidiscipline content areas. This obviously happens to be around the new generation science standards. On the right-hand side, you'll see the application of the language function or skill. One thing that we really try and point out to our educators or our colleagues is that language is always in the driver's seat. Content is also in the car, but it's in the passenger seat. So we're connecting language and content, but we're assessing students on that language skill or function, which is connected to those standards. And this is an example again with the virtual professor providing input on the left. This is around language function and construction. These have more of the grammatical aspects of language, but also a very, very important part of the language. So we're trying to, this is around text structure. And again, we're kind of integrating that critical consciousness where they're seeing the application of text structure in real life as well as within the content area. And that's where you're going to see, this is just an example around the lottery. But again, if you look on the right, you'll notice that all of the questions that the students are being asked are around the language function or skill. And this is just a question we like to kind of throw out to our fellow colleagues, our dear educators, just around scaffolding. How do we scaffold instruction for our English learners? And that's really a universal question that comes up a lot, especially when we have within that middle range or expanding or intermediate range with long-term English learners, their needs are different. So what type of scaffolding do we provide, or do you provide? So feel free to put that in the chat if you would like to just provide some feedback. If not, we will just move into the next slide.
Great, thanks, David. Just a couple more slides here before we go in and show you the curriculum firsthand. But so kind of going back to earlier, we were talking about the downloadables. So for each online lesson in each of the 3 buckets, there is an equivalent downloadable. And so I just did a screenshot here that shows you an example of a downloadable in foundational literacy skills. This is lesson 8, which is all about our controlled vowels. And you can see that the teacher's doing really just a warm up and modeling with the students. Very similar in collaborative listening and speaking screenshot. And then what happens is once you go through like a warm up and modeling, then the students go back into the program, and there's practice assignments that complement all the online lessons. And the practice assignments, one thing I want to point out is the online lessons, as the students move through those lessons, the program tracks and grades the students. Whereas the practice assignments, students are actually writing into the program. Once they finish each practice assignment, they submit it. the system isn't grading it because these are, writing and things where, as an educator, you'd want to review and make your own formative assessment on how that student is progressing. So the screenshot I have here is one is in foundational literacy skills. Again, it's that lesson on our controlled vowels. So they have some clues, then they're writing the word in the word, and then they're using that word in a sentence. And then an example in collaborative listening and speaking, you can see there's these images, and based on the images, the students are typing in descriptive words to describe that image.
And we've been talking a lot about ELD level 2, but we just wanted to provide a little bit more insight into how the resources are developed. We also have an ELD level 1, which addresses the needs of our newcomers and emerging or beginning language learners up to about 2 years in the country. And if you look on at the ELD level 2, it's for that our students that move beyond that, our intermediate levels and long-term English learners. For ELD level 1, the standards are the same, but the rigor is different, or the amount of skills involved in each of those standards is different from level 1 to level 2. In ELD level 1, we provide a lot more scaffolding and opportunities to apply functional language, functional vocabulary language, and we tend to stick with ideas and concepts that build schema or background around middle school and high school life. Again, as we talked about in level 2, this is where we're integrating multiple subject matter in social studies, math, and science. In ELD level 1, there's the students have the online interactive exercises, as well as ELD level 2. In ELD level 2, we start building in some opportunities for oral language practice and fluency. So the students are recording themselves, and it could be a given response where they're adding to, they're paraphrasing, or they're practicing questioning, or they might be reading a summary that they wrote and just recording themselves for fluency and recognizing where they might have a few errors in the language, so they can go back and change that. In ELD level 1, we offer an American school culture, and that's providing the students with some background around what middle and high school culture is like, and that has to do with routines in the classroom, knowing things that are offered at a high school, with a lot of functional vocabulary building. And then lastly, there's downloadable opportunities or practice exercises, if you will, on both ELD level 1 and ELD level 2. ELD level 2, it's a lot more rigorous. So we're really getting those students to do a lot more writing that productive language, and connecting that to the language skills and functions in each lesson.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to switch gears here and log in so you can have a look at this firsthand. I have a teacher login. It's a demo account. Unfortunately, I can't show you real student data, but I think this will give you a really good overview. So once you're logged in, everything that you need is over here on the left-hand side. And I'm just going to kind of go through it similarly to how we walked through the presentation. So first, you can see ELD2 entry assessment. So let's select that. And then there's those same 3 buckets. So the foundational literacy skills, again, there are approximately 25 assessment questions. And then you can see collaborative listening and speaking, there's approximately 25 questions, and language function and construction, approximately 25 questions. So I'm just going to jump around here and give you an idea of what, first off, what a couple of assessment questions look like in foundational literacy skills.
Listen to the word park. Choose the word or words below that have the same R sound.
So then, the student is going to read these words to themselves: marker, heart, rubber, air. and select the ones that have the same R sound as in park. So again, you can see we're assessing our controlled vowels. I'll show you one more question that's similar.
Listen to the word sticker. Choose the word or words below that have the same sound.
Okay, let me go back to my entry assessment area and let's look at a couple of questions, assessment questions in the collaborative listening and speaking. Again, I'm going to jump around a little here. And you can always click this to make your video larger. Okay.
When the first signs of a storm appear, the air pressure begins to fall, a breeze picks up, and the ocean swells increase to 10 to 15 feet. White cirrus clouds from the growing storm appear on the horizon. A hurricane warning is issued, and residents are ordered to evacuate. What is a hurricane? A hurricane is a large rotating storm with high-speed winds that form over warm waters in tropical areas. When warm air over the water rises, it is replaced by cooler air. The cooler air will then warm and start to rise. This mysterious cycle causes huge storm clouds to form. These storm clouds will begin to rotate with the spin of the Earth. If there is enough warm water, the cycle will continue, and the storm clouds and wind speeds will grow, causing a hurricane to form.
So the skill that we're assessing here is reading and viewing closely. So this is their question.
Which statement below best describes the relationship between air temperatures and hurricanes?
I'll show you one more in this section.
In the event of a major storm like a hurricane, you should create an emergency plan. While the local government will provide instructions, it is still wise to create a plan before disaster strikes. Here are a few helpful hints. Keep non-perishable emergency supplies on hand, like batteries, candles, prescription drugs, drinking water, dry food, and first aid resources, in case you are unable to leave your home. Take steps to protect your home, such as removing gravel or rock landscaping that could cause harm. Install storm shutters to protect your windows. Make sure exterior doors are hurricane-proof. Seal the outside wall openings, such as vents and outlets, to avoid potential flooding.
Which statement explains why people should prepare a home before a major storm?
So again, that question as well is assessing reading and viewing closely. And I'm going to jump back here for a minute to home. And just to show you, so we just looked at a few questions in the ELD2 entry assessment. So now, after your students have gone through all three of those sections, then you want to see how, they did. You would go to ELD2 entry assessment and grades. And then, unfortunately, there's not a lot of data in my demo account, but all your students will show up here, and then you can scroll along and you can see each of the assessment areas, foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, language function and construction, and you can see how, your student did. The good insight is when you click on this little magnifying glass next to the percentage, it will give you a lot of great details. How long they were in the system. Well, somebody just left it on. They were in there for 4 days. But anyways, it does give you the good insight as to how long they were in there. And more importantly, the questions that they got right or wrong. And then when you scroll down, it will actually show you the questions, where the student fell out. So let me go back to home. And so now let's go into the lesson modules. So again, we have those same three buckets: foundational literacy skills, collaborative listening and speaking, and language function and construction. So each lesson covers a standard. And let's go into foundational literacy skills. And let's look at lesson 8, because we looked at a couple of assessment questions on our controlled vowels. And now, this will kind of show you how the lessons correspond. So for the sake of time, we just have a couple minutes. I'm just going to kind of show you a very little bit here.
Today we are going to learn about how vowel sounds can be changed when there is the letter R after it. These are called R-controlled vowels. Understanding how to read a word with an R-controlled vowel can help you read and pronounce the word correctly. Knowing the spelling patterns of the various R-controlled vowels will also help you spell words correctly. The first R-controlled vowel I'm going to introduce is the R sound. Say the sound with me, R. The R sound can be spelled with the letters AR, like in star, architect, and market. The letter R after the vowel A makes the R sound.
Okay, I just want to stop it there again for the sake of time. But this video input, the virtual professor is going to go through each one of the spelling patterns for the student. And then from there, as they move on, there's a nice chart here, and it gives the sound of the R control vowels.
R, or.
And the appropriate spelling patterns. And then they're going to go through their exercises.
Purple.
So they're going to select, the correct spelling, and the lesson goes on and on. So we're here at question 1. So you can see there's quite a bit more to go, but I just wanted to give you, a quick idea of what a lesson was like. And then let's go into collaborative listening and speaking. And again, if you remember, we looked at a couple of assessment questions around reading and viewing closely. So now the lesson on reading and viewing closely. Let me start at the beginning here.
The ability to explain to others ideas and concepts you have learned after reading a passage or viewing a video is important. In this lesson, you will go over some explanatory techniques. Explanatory techniques are skills you can use to help you explain things more clearly. Also, by recognizing these techniques when you read or view content, you can also better understand what is being explained. One explanatory technique you can use is to compare 2 or more ideas or things. To compare is to note similarities. Words for comparison include also, as well as, and equally. Here is an example of using a comparison word to explain the formula for the area of a square.
The formula for finding the area of a square is also used for a rectangle.
Okay, again, I'm going to just stop it there. And the virtual professor is going to go through, the rest of the lesson input. And then the student, when they go to the next page, they are going to have a reference chart that they can continue to go back to, where it gives each explanatory technique: compare, contrast, cause and effect, problem and solution. And then we say what the meaning is or purpose. And then we give examples for each one of those commonly used words or phrases. And then from there, they will go into their exercises. I'll show you maybe one question. I know we're about out of time here.
Warmer weather due to global warming is affecting the polar bear's dens. If the winter weather is warmer than usual, it may result in the collapse of the maternity dens for the newborn polar bear cubs. This leaves the polar bear cubs unprotected and is one reason for the rise in their mortality rate.
So from there, they're going to select the appropriate explanatory technique used. So one other thing that I didn't mention that I should is for all of the lesson modules. So we'll use collaborative listening and speaking for the sake of things. When a student starts they will start with lesson 1 and they need to get 80% or higher to move on to lesson 2. If they get below that, they'll need to redo lesson 1 until they can master it at least 80% or better to continue on to the next lesson. So all the modules are set up that way. And then just the last thing I wanted to point out, because we talked a little bit about it, is the practice assignments. So let's just use, okay, first let's look at the downloadable for collaborative listening and speaking, reading and viewing closely. We just looked at a little bit of that online lesson. So again, with the downloadable, the teacher can do a warm-up exercise with the students, and then they go back into the system. Let's go into the lesson modules, and again, collaborative listening and speaking. And you can see all the online lessons, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And lesson 6 is reading and viewing closely. So now at the bottom, you can see there's a practice assignment for each online lesson. So if I select lesson 6, this supports the online lesson and gives the student an opportunity to really, work in greater detail with this particular skill. So again, we have a chart and the students are typing in. You can see I've already typed it in here, but the practice assignments, like I mentioned before, can be many pages. And again, they're typing right into the program. So with that, I think I better stop because I'm a little over time, but let me know if there's any questions or anything.
Jennifer, one of the questions is, are students able to go back and review their lessons later at home?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely, they are. So the way the program is set up is everybody has unique user credentials and it's all hosted in the cloud. So students, as long as they have an internet connected device, they're able to go back in if they want to work on it some more from home, wherever they have a connected device. And we really encourage that. We feel like, practice is the mother of all skills, right? So the more they go through the exercises, the better.
Great. And then will this program last throughout the whole school year?
I could go ahead and answer that. Yeah. So I had mentioned the teacher kind of using the lessons to monitor student progress, modify and adjust instruction, as kind of using it as the co-pilot and the pilot being the teacher. So in the pacing guides that we offer up, some of those lessons, for example, lesson 6, the lesson that Jennifer was showcasing, that lesson could last 1 to 2 weeks because it has multiple parts to it. I call them kind of learning progressions or skills that are being covered within the context of, let's say, reading and viewing closely. So the way that pacing guides work out, that as if the teacher is really monitoring the student progress and taking the time to build background, provide more context, and review the lessons adequately, then the program will last about a year. And for those teachers using it as just a supplemental, it might be actually longer than that because of the number of resources. So we have many different ways that the program's actually being used. It's going to be used in summer school programs, after school tutoring, as well as just providing the students with some additional practice after school, as well as a designated ELD course or class.
Excellent. And I just noticed the summer program on the slide. Can you guys speak to us a little bit more about that?
Oh yeah, thanks, Christy. So yeah, this last slide here, I just wanted to say that because I feel like we go through a lot of information in a really short amount of time. So if you'd like to see a more in-depth demo to better understand the program, or you're looking for pricing, or you want to learn about the summer program that we're offering, then please do reach out to Studica. Studica is our partner in education, and their contact information you can see up there on the slide. But yeah, just to give you just a high level, our summer program is an 8-week program, and we have it constructed into 2 different offerings so that you can really focus on secondary English learners that are newcomers and beginners, if that is the topography of your English learners, or we have a program that's really more geared towards our intermediate level and our long-term English learners. But you know, we're happy to give you more information about that, but that's just kind of a quick high level.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. And that looks like it wraps up our questions. So thank you, Jennifer and David, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, if you do have any questions, please email us at info@studica.com, and just keep an eye out for that email that I'll be sending with the recording in a few days. And if you could just take a moment to complete our survey, we would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Okay, thank you.